had fibromyalgia going on, a lot of chronic fatigue. I was coughing stuff up that had me pretty concerned, doing a lot of research. All signs kind of pointed to some cancer. And I said, well, this is serious. I've always been, a seeker of truth. And so I kind of knew that, there was some stuff that I could do about it. I didn't need to go to doctors. I knew chemo was pretty much just a good way to nuke it and make it worse. So I don't want to get into that a whole lot here because I know you're just getting some information before we start. But I guess I just had my own health ailments, myself and my family. I had a lot of stuff going on that I personally wanted to heal. So I went looking for alternative cures and stuff. I found that all that was found in diet. So I started changing my own and I started seeing it leave my system. Family was a little skeptical at first, and then they decided to join me and they started kind of relieving some of their ailments. So I guess it was just a process of we had some things going on. We were looking for, a cure for it. We found it. After we implemented it for a while and had good results, we started wanting to advocate for it. So.
Yes. And I find it, I had a similar sort of situation in that I was following the mainstream recommendations for health and wellness for the last 30 years. This has been my full-time career. My entire life has been fitness and wellness. I've always been a coach, trainer for people that are trying to make changes in their life. So I'm always trying to be cutting edge and a leader in my field, in my area, and always following, the typical recommendation, which has always been, high protein, low starch, low sugars, high vegetable diet. And I was following that for many, many years. And I used that system and method to diet for many, many years. And I was still finding that I was coming up with symptoms of pain. I was having some sleep issues. I was certainly having some emotional issues that I found that sometimes I was just not able to handle my emotions and my mood and my personality. And I just couldn't understand why. It just didn't seem to make sense. It wasn't adding up to making sense. But so I was looking and searching for answers. Because I was following everything that I was supposed to be doing, I was very open to something new. And when something new arrived, I embraced it very quickly. And as soon as I started reading the work of Dr. Arnold Ehret, work that's over 110 years old, work that was documented with thousands upon thousands of people that healed and changed their lives. I was so inspired by that work and that information that I very, very quickly made change and immediately started seeing change in my body. I lost 30 pounds right away and found just a complete change in my emotional well-being and instantaneously dropped pain within a couple of weeks, and my sleep settled down, which had been a problem for 18 years. I had been through all of the medications to try and manage my sleep, and all of a sudden this came back under control and management. So Jay, just to share with everyone that may have an interest, how did you and I get connected? I noticed when you came on my page, a lot of people were intrigued by kind of your responses, and that's what led me to reach out to you. But how did, just to share for everyone, how did we get connected?
That's awesome. That's awesome, John. Yeah. I've been on a path just looking for like-minded people, looking for people that are, on a path of healing, contributing, sharing truth, wisdom, wanting to know, know thyself is a huge, huge thing. And once you do, you know yourself, the world that you live in, you can really start to kind of affect some change, both in yourself and in, your environment. And so I've been reaching out to people that I just saw as wise or other seekers, people who are on the road of health and healing. And I saw you and I saw your posts. I wanted to reach out to you. I noticed that you had a lot in mind with health. And you were kind of bordering into some of the areas that I was in. And you seemed like you had a pretty traditional mindset, but you were kind of coming at it. You weren't telling people, things like, hey, what's up with protein? Here, let me tell you. You were asking. You were like, what's your opinion on protein? That's one defining point. I saw a post of yours that said, how much protein do we need? And I said, oh man, I got to answer this, and I hopped in. I just knew everybody was going to be saying, oh man, you need this much protein, that much protein. So I was like, here's my chance to, at least impart some knowledge on a few people, So I came in and I talked about, protein, and that's where it kind of blew up. And then I noticed you had a lot of posts like that where you weren't giving information, you were asking questions. And I think that's critical. That's what we all need to be doing right now, is asking questions. We've been given plenty of information. And if we're not able to ask questions, we're never going to see if it's the right information or the wrong information. So I think we need to keep an inquisitive mind, and that's, seek and you will find. That's how we're going to, figure out what we're looking for.
I think that's so important what you said there, an inquisitive mind. I would describe you as a seeker, Jay. You're a student of life. You're a health and wellness coach. You're a fruitarian. You're a detoxification expert. You've been doing this for 2 or 3 years, and that's why I thought it would be really valuable for me to have a chance to talk with you and share some of your wisdom and experience with my audience. I think because sometimes, if I keep saying the same message, I think people can kind of tune out, but it's great to have other people share the information. I think you just touched on something really great there, is that there's tons of information out there, and there's a lot of conflicting information out there. And from what I see and what I seem to be experiencing is so much of what we believe in our minds to be our reality drastically affects our reality. And this is what I found with myself, with my own detoxification process, that as I kind of overcame certain limited beliefs that I had, one particular about protein, another one about fruit and fruit sugar and vegetables and minerals and vitamins and all of the things that we, they say that we always need. Like, I had to kind of overcome this because I've had my background in kinesiology, because I had my background in the sciences and psychology. I always learned from school and from nutrition and from books, and I lived my entire life following what the doctors were suggesting as, what's right and what's wrong. And I wasn't getting the results that I wanted in my life and my body following the mainstream ideas. And that's why I embraced the new idea, and that's what really made the difference. And as I eliminated the limited thoughts and beliefs, I found that my detoxification went more deeply and more change happened. So that idea about that you said there, information, I think information can almost freeze us and get us stuck inside the matrix. It gets us stuck in our place.
Absolutely. John, I'd like to touch on something you said there too. I'd like to mention that there's a phrase kind of in the seeking community that let results be thy proof. And that's it. You can listen to things all day long. A lot of us have a lot of cognitive dissonance where we take in new information that challenges our current belief systems. And we say, oh, no, that can't possibly be true. There's the old adage, don't knock it before you try it. And I'm not going to say blindly rush off into anything somebody tells you to do, but use a little intuition, do a little research. If there's a lot of people saying the same thing, there might be something to it. If you hear one thing from one person, maybe go research it a little bit. But if you see there's a big following on that subject, a lot of people can't be wrong, they say. But but
then to take that argument, a lot of people are consuming protein and insisting that we need vitamins and minerals and we need these things in order to be successful. There's a lot of people thinking like that. So there's much fewer people that have kind of made this transition to realize the value of fruits and the healing value of fruits. And so I think that is, part of the discouragement, that there's less people on this side. I'll tell you, I had a message this week from a customer, an old customer who moved towards a fruit-based lifestyle and I guess encouraged her family to do that as well too. And then she left me a message this week about telling me about how her daughter broke out because she started following a fruit-based lifestyle, and now she's thinking that this must be wrong, and she needs to now go back and embrace her meat and starch, and that I've got this wrong approach, and I need to be careful, and God bless me because I'm going down this path, I guess to meet with the devil. So can you mention something in response there?
Absolutely, absolutely. I was hoping you'd ask. There's something. There's a really good leader in the field of detoxification and diet and nutrition. Doctor, you're probably familiar with Dr. Robert Morse. He's a
Yep.
naturopathic doctor.
Yep, I follow Dr. Morse closely. Yes.
Absolutely, absolutely. He talks a lot about the healing crisis, is what he calls it. And when we're getting better, a lot of times, you've heard the adage that things have to get worse before they get better. All these little phrases, if it's been around for a long time and a lot of people are saying it, it comes from some truth. And so the truth to that in this situation is that a lot of people experience, they'll have some pain, they'll have some kind of terrible symptoms, I don't know,
Headaches,
decreased headaches,
sore
yes,
throats, body temperature changes, foggy head, sleep problems, mysterious pains, runny noses, symptoms of just about any kind can happen when you start the detoxification process.
Yeah, it's a two-step process. And so the first thing that happens is that your body breaks down anything that's bad, that's toxic, that's waste, that's that's what detoxification is all about. So as that stuff gets dealt with and broken down and cleared out of your system, it kind of has no choice but manifest, in some kind of way, so you'll get a lot of mucus, you'll get a lot of people, there's not a better way to say this, diarrhea, is a huge thing that happens.
Yes,
a lot of people get a lot of headaches,
acne, pimples, boils,
and it's got to get out somewhere. Yeah, it has to get out of your system somehow. So it's usually not a very pleasant process, and it scares a lot of people away because for them it's new. It's kind of like I'm a logo designer, and just to derail for just a second, I tell the business owners a lot of times I know what I need. That's awesome. You certainly do, but you're one business. And when I've dealt with hundreds of businesses over 17 years, it's kind of like that. You're one person going through detoxification and it's very new to you. Then you might feel like an expert because we all do. But when you see, dozens, hundreds of people go through detoxification, you see them ride out these symptoms, you see the breakdown, and then you see the build up. See, that's the second part, is that once we get rid of all this stuff that we don't need, one of the scariest issues that I hear from people most commonly is the weight loss. They drop weight and they say, I'm looking skinny. People are pointing it out to me. I wasn't trying to lose mass. I wasn't trying to lose muscle. So what happens is you shed those things that, really aren't supposed to be there. You get down to kind of skin and bones, and then you build back up. And it's the same process. It's not the fruit that does it. It's not the foods that do it. It's your body. And so you just keep eating right, and your body is going to naturally cleanse things out until you're fairly low weight and mass. And then it's going to build them right back up, and you're going to wind out stabilized at the perfect BMI.
I really like what you said there, because I've had a lot of actually negative opinion shared about my weight loss and about the way that I look. I've had a lot of people share their negative opinions, and what it's really done for me is made me realize how much we have to really give love and acceptance to ourselves, from ourselves. We have to be able to get our power and energy from within ourselves, and that's a real humongous part about detoxification too. If you follow and look at any of the doctors, Dr. Arrett, Dr. Morse, Dr. Sebi, Professor Spira, if you look at any of these world leaders, there's always a connection to a deep spiritual energy, right? There's always a spiritual connection here. And I think that for some people is difficult because they just don't know how to get into that spiritual space or access that spiritual space. And because of that, they shut the door, make fun of, or point fingers at anything that got that spirit, that woo-woo spirit kind of make fun of idea, because it's not tangible. But spirit is a part of all of us, and it has tremendous power. And that's where we need to go within ourselves to find our own value and not get it from others. Like I say, I've had a lot of negative feedback about how I'm looking, about the changes that I'm making. But although I'm feeling so much better, and I know that my body's healing, so I really have to disregard that. And I want to add that, being a black man, fortunately for me, I'm a light-skinned black man, and I don't have a real challenging integration with the population. But however, those black men that are very visibly colored have a lot more challenge than I do. However, being black in a society that is kind of dominated by white society and white views and white values, the opinion of what is attractive and what is appropriate is kind of put out through marketing, like on TV, and everyone has an opinion about what's right. A person's supposed to look a certain way. And if a person doesn't look a certain way, then they're not smart or intelligent, or they're not valuable, or they're not important, or if someone doesn't look a certain way, they're not healthy, right? And this is the opinion of people, and people need to really be careful with their opinions. Everyone has an opinion, and everyone has a right to an opinion, and everyone has a right and an opportunity to share their opinion. And it's okay that, you may have an opinion of me that maybe I don't look right now for you, but that's your opinion, and it's held from, your experience and your limited beliefs. So, if you don't have something nice to say, then try to keep it to yourself. I think try to be encouraging to your brothers and sisters. We're all on this planet together, and we all need to be conscious and loving of each other and supportive of each other, and help lift each other up and contribute to the forward progress of everyone else here. So be careful when you're speaking to other people. Don't put other people down. Don't take your opinions and place them on top of other people.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. There's a couple of things I'd like to touch on with that, actually. And one of the things I wanted to say today is that we have to stop seeing each other as separate. I mean, it's getting to the point, I mean, we're all waking up, unity is where it's at, collective is where it's at, being whole and being one with our community, with each other. It's really an amazing thing. It's an amazing time to be alive right now. And I think, when you come down to a certain level of understanding, when if you really research spiritual matters, if you really research just the mechanics of reality and the way things are, I might sound crazy right now to some people, that's fine, but you are me, I am you, we're all kind of each other, we're all part of the same organism. It's an octave, the way that the world is made. It's kind of like
it's
music.
A collective unconscious. It's a collective. We're all a part of that. We're a part of that universal energy, and we need to realize that.
And yes, and I want to say, even on a scientific level, we're made, our bodies, inside our bodies, there's a lot of smaller organisms that, are kind of running around acting like we're a planet and they're people, and, it's that whole body contained that makes the person, and it's an octave. And that's how the earth is that now there's all these people, in a higher octave that are running around the earth acting like they're one. It's scientifically, I want to touch on actually something you said about the spiritual element. And I know, who knows who's going to see this? I'm sure. You have to assume there's a lot of people who have an atheist mentality or, an agnostic mentality. And that's okay. And, like you were talking about opinions, everybody's got their own truth. I've found personally, it's kind of a dance between everything. It's all one story. It's one God. It's one love. It's one people. All the religions are just trying to see that. I can see how atheists think that there's not a God. I stumbled kind of on that mindset for a minute. And,
I have as well too, and I've explored that, and I think you even have to explore that. Like, it can't be all one or all of the other. It can't be one way or the other way. We can't exclude anyone. It has to be inclusive to everyone, and that power or access, whether you want to call it God or no God, it's just something. It's just vibration. It's just energy. It's something that holds the entire world together. Right, and that God or not God, whichever way you want to look at it, but there's still a force that holds it all together.
And I want to touch on that too, John. That force is actually called the quantum field. Science, all scientists, it's led to a divine element. So when you say there's a spiritual element to things, it's not hoodoo. It's not a matter of, hey, will you believe this? It's, will you look at the evidence? Because everybody who's a quantum physicist, there's physics and there's metaphysics. And physics is the study of those things that are seen and tangible. And metaphysics is the study of those things that are unseen and intangible. And if you don't believe that's true, what is magnetism? What is gravity? What is there's so much stuff like that. We've got 7 colors that we can see, the visible spectrum. It's Roy G. Biv: red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, violet. There's ultraviolet and there's infrared. There's a whole spectrum. There's subsonic and ultrasonic.
They're all vibrations. They all have frequency, right? Just like sound has frequency, just like our bodies have frequency, just like our at the atomic level, we've got particles, we've got protons, we've got neutrons. There's got vibration that's going on within us. So, in order for us to move, electrical current and electrical impulse must move from my brain out to my arm. Like, I can't move my arm without electrical impulse. So in order for me to move, I must be electrical, able to conduct electricity. And, another, absolute foundational fact about me is I have to be alkaline in order for my body to be healthy. And this brings it back to that, detoxification really means like making sure that we're consuming foods that are alkaline and electric. And if you look at, again, if you want to use that word God or divine, or if you want to use that word, energy, or if you want to use that force or whatever you want to call it, like whatever created all of this, every single thing that they created was made alkaline and electric, right? So we need to make sure that the foods that we're consuming are in alignment with that. And if they're not, then we're putting something into our body that's actually a poison. And if we poison our body for long enough, then something's going to go wrong. And that's just a straight fact of science.
Yeah. Let me give you some details on that, John. Actually, with the body, there's 2 sides of chemistry. If you're familiar with Robert Morris, Dr. Robert Morris.
Yes, he talks about the 2 sides of chemistry. Yes.
Absolutely. So you have the acid and you have the base, or the alkaline. And so what it is acid is electric and alkaline is magnetic. And we are electric magnetic beings. It's a merge of both. That's how the whole world works. And so interesting fact here, we actually have blood vessels and we have lymph vessels. The blood kind of feeds our body in with nutrients. The lymph clears it out of waste after that process happens. And so a lot of the foods we eat, the acids, the reason that vegan has become so big, the reason that fruitarian is so big is because meat, dairy, complex starches, complex grains, they have a lot of acids. Protein is acid. It's bad for your body. You talked about if you poison your body long enough, bad things will happen. It's called systemic acidosis. And that's what happens. You get too much acid and you need to be alkaline. And to be
However, the traditional mainstream approach to health and wellness only talks about nutrient support. It only talks about what you need. If I tell somebody that I'm moving towards the fruitarian style diet, if I'm eating 80% fruit, everyone always tells me that that's impossible and you can't survive because you don't have this, you don't have that, you don't have that. It's always talking about what I'm missing, what nutrients I don't have, what's missing from my diet. We got to stop thinking about nutrition in the way in this method, like that we just keep thinking and talking about what the body needs to get, and we establish that from what the cell is made from, right? But all of this is just theory. We don't really have scientific evidence of any of it. It's all theory, and everyone's learned all these theories, and everyone has all these theories inside of them, and it's blocking them from realizing what the real truth is, which is on the other side of all these theories. Health is not so much supplying our body with nutrients and energy or anything, as much as it is removing the toxic elements that have been put into the body over extended periods of years of overeating and incorrect eating and incorrect food combining. Removing the toxic elements from all these years is what health is all about. That's really the work of Dr. Eric.
There's another pretty prolific person on YouTube that I like to follow. His name is Matt Monarch, and he talks about whole foods a lot. And really processed food came along about 100 years ago. Nobody was messing with that before then. That's when a lot of these diseases started coming about. And Robert Morse, Dr. Robert Morse talks a lot about we're frugivores. There's a lot of evidence for that. Again, kind of theory, but the science is, between our teeth, we don't have any claws, we don't have any aggressive features, our bone structure, we're set up more for gathering than hunting. He's always talking about we're frugivores. The primate that we closely resemble the most is the monkey. And they're reaching for fruit and eating
the chimpanzee, the orangutan, the huge silverback, such a huge, powerful animal that, exists and builds that power and strength without protein. So how is it possible that it builds such a massively strong body without protein? Sorry to interrupt.
Oh, no, that's fine. Actually, let me answer that. I know that was hypothetical, but I have an answer for it. So there's a lot of people that are on like a raw vegan, raw fruit, kind of diet that are bodybuilders. It's a huge thing. There's, they gain muscles. There's oh man, the word for it is slipping. So I'm going to avoid that because I don't know what the word is.
One of the strongest men in the world right now is vegan. It's not a debate any longer about the possibility of building muscle and maintaining strength on a vegan nutrition. It's just really, if you're still in the dark about that, you've got blinders on.
Right. Vegan gains. When you mention that guy, vegan gains is, you search for that, you'll see some people that are building muscle on it. And it's because we need the amino acids. We've been thinking that we need the protein, but what's in the protein is the amino acids. And that's the good part of the protein. When you eat like meat, it's got an awful lot of protein and a little bit of amino acids.
Amino acids in a chain create proteins. We don't really need to eat it in a chain. It's not the protein chain that we need. It's the individual building blocks, the amino acids that we need. And those amino acids can be found in fruit and vegetables.
Yep, in a very high level, yes. And everything that they say we need, B12, omega-3, things like that. It's always found in fruit. It's always
iron. It's always the same stuff that we've been programmed to believe that we need to have this, and that's what's wrong with the vegan nutrition. And so we don't look at the truth, and we've been told to stay away from fruits and fruit sugar and stay away from sugar because of insulin and diabetes. Meanwhile, diabetes at its root is really a protein and fat, an animal protein and fat disease. It's not really a sugar disease at all.
Yeah, let me mention that too, John. There's a lot of people, actually, I have a relative, I'm not going to mention the name here, but I've got a relative that she's suffering with diabetes right now. And she said, well, am I going to be able to do the fruit? What's going to happen to my diabetes? And I looked at her and I said, it's going to go away in about 2 or 3 months and it's going to be, settled, because she's like, well, doesn't fruit have high sugar? And I want to cover just 2 myths of fruit real quick for you, John.
This is really important. This was a huge TSN turning point for me when I realized this truth. Thank you.
Excellent. So one of the myths of fruit is that they're high in sugars. Sure, but our body needs sugar. It's carbon. We're carbon-based animals. That's what we need. If we don't have sugar, we won't live. So we need sugar, but here's the difference. There's complex sugar and there's simple sugar, mono sugar. So when you get fruits, you've got a simple sugar that's easy for us to break down. So we eat the sugar, we process it, we digest it, everything's good, body gets what it needs. There's not a lot of waste, not a lot of fermentation from things that we can't break down and digest. When we eat things like complex starches and complex grains, and I don't even want to talk about white sugar. You can go look up documentaries about how
that's sucrose, right? You got sucrose, you got fructose, you got glucose, you got galactose, you got maltose, but the fruit sugar, the fructose, it's so specifically unique in that the liver actually processes fructose. Like we've got an organ that was designed to actually help our body design to digest the sugar. It's different than every other sugar. It does not need insulin in order to be utilized. And that's what's so highly specific and adaptive about the human species, the most evolved species on the planet, that it doesn't actually need glucose. It needs fructose. We're designed to use fructose for energy.
Thank you. Yeah, and I want to mention with that too is that the other types of sugars that you mentioned, those are the complex sugars that tend to be more man-made or, produced.
That's your starch, your glucose, your disaccharides, your polysaccharides.
Yep. And those things, honestly, we have such a hard time breaking those down that they wind up fermenting.
Just like the protein, chains of amino acids. We don't need to eat the chain. We need the individual building blocks, those individual parts, like the fructose, like the amino acid.
Yeah, because it's always easier for our body to process the individual parts than it is the complex chains. And even with the complex chains, I do want to mention, we have such a hard time breaking them down. They stay in our system for so long that they lead to fermentation. And inside your body is like a breeding grounds for bacteria. It's warm, it's moist. So when you've got that stuff fermenting, what happens if you get a bunch of stuff fermenting, outside of your body? It brings bugs, right? It brings parasites. So what happens is we all wind up just completely ridden with parasites like Candida albicans and Helicobacter pylori. And most of us have these, and it comes from rotting meat. It comes from rotting grains, rotting starches that are inside our body that sit there so long while we try to have a hard time digesting them that it creates those conditions.
And then when we have these or organic living beings that have now parasitically moved into our lives, that we've got this other organism living within us, those organisms now start to alter our mood, alter our personality, change our energy. And when you start to detoxify and you start to eliminate these things, you start to notice how much energy and emotion starts to come back into your life, or how much your energy and emotion and clarity starts to change because you're eliminating and ridding yourself of these toxins. Not to mention, if you've got all this acidosis in your body sitting inside of your lymphatic system, that you've got these cells that are sitting in pools of acidosis. It's like these cells are like frying in a frying pan of acid, and it's no doubt reason. It totally explains why you've got pain in your neck. You've got so much lymph nodes in your neck here. We think it's tension. No, it's inflammation that's caused by the acidosis inside your lymphatic system. In your lower back, you've got lymph nodes all through your glutes and your hips. They want to tell you it's your piriformis and it's tightness in your lower back and tightness in your muscles, and you think it's because you're lifting something, or you think it's because you're doing something. It's not because of that. It's because of what you're eating, and you need to change your food and realize that. But if you've got the blinders on and you're stuck in kind of the old ideas and the old beliefs and all of the limited thoughts that everyone's going to tell you why you can't do it, if you're only thinking about the reason of what you're going to give up and what you're going to lose, and you're not spending any time thinking about where you're going and what you're trying to create, you're never going to get there.
Oh yeah, absolutely. That's the only way to affect positive change is you got to focus on the positive. People say, how do you deal with negative things in your life? And I don't pay them any mind. I ignore them. I act like they're not there because that's not where I want to spend my focus. Where attention goes, energy flows. I don't want to do that at all. So, I just worry about positive. Yeah. I also want to mention, I'm glad that you talked about, Well, I want to mention those Candida albicans, Helicobacter pylori. They're bacterial, they're fungal, they're parasitic, and so once you get that, it thrives. And you mentioned how it starts changing your mindset and altering your mood. That's they call the gut and the colon like the second brain. The neurons, it's almost identical to your brain, and so you have thoughts up here in this brain that kind of tell the rest of your body what to do, and then you kind of wind up with a two-way communication and thoughts that come from your gut, back to your mind. And it's incredible because once you have those parasites there, they crave, everything wants to survive. I mean, that's a survival. That's what this whole life game is all about. So these things, once they enter your system, they want to survive. And so they make you crave the same things that they need that'll ferment. You crave the meat, you crave the cheese, you crave all the dairy, you crave the starches. And it's because, if you have those cravings and you have a hard time getting rid of it, you probably are completely eat up by parasitic bacterial fungi. Yeah.
I think that leads us into this one more thing that I think is really important to talk about, and that is even just the fact that we've got this limited belief that if we stop eating, if we miss a meal, we're going to surely perish. I mean, there's people on this planet, Jay, that don't eat for days at a time. They just don't have access to food. And here we are, if we miss, lunch or dinner, it's the end of the world. Like, we've got to realize that, not all of our energy needs to come from food in the first place. Please touch on that.
Absolutely. That's great. There's another guy that I follow a lot. His name's Ray Maor. It's Maor. And man, he's always talking about energy and nourishing yourself energetically and eating the right foods. And I just have to give credit to him because it's where I learned this information. In part, I learned it from some other areas as well. Like I said, do your research. But he talks about, he's just a big advocate on energy. No matter how you want to think about it, it comes from the sun. The energy comes from the sun. It's taken in by the plants. And then the animals eat the plants. And then we eat the animals. And the farther from
source, we eat the plants, right?
Well, yeah, or we eat the plants, sure.
Right.
And then even like the higher the plants, they say you got the rooted, plants, and then you got the vegetables, and then you got, the fruits that are hanging in the air. And there's a lot to that because the ground is actually a little more magnetic and the air is a little more electric. And so as you get higher, it kind of raises the vibration of things. So let's just say, there's people who get their energy from the sun. I'm a sun gazer. If I'm going to mention this at all, I have to kind of give you a little disclaimer. Use HRM's method if you're going to get into sun gazing. I don't want anybody to hurt their eyes. I don't want it to get a bad name. It's Hira Ratan Menek. Just search for HRM. But
for sure, like this conversation is just you and I talking, Jay. Anyone that wants to follow is following at their own risk and doing their own research and making their own decisions to move forward, against the mainstream population and the mainstream recommendations. And we're suggesting that there is, healing that can be received if you do step outside of those traditional doctor recommended programs. But again, we are not doctors and we don't have any right to force anybody to anything. We're just sharing information.
Absolutely. So I do want to mention, since I mentioned sun gazing, please, the right index to do that at is an hour before or after sunset, when the sun's right in front of your eyes, kind of level with you and more reddish and less yellow. I won't go too far into this, but basically, you stare at the sun for a little bit. You start with 10 seconds. That's it. Don't do more than that. And then you add 10 seconds every day. I want to talk a little bit about my experience with that. I did that for several months, and I found myself with so much energy. I wasn't wanting to eat. I wasn't wanting to sleep. I was staying up for about a week, eating like every 3 days. It was just incredible. And I didn't feel drained. I didn't feel tired or lethargic. I'm actually a person coming out of fibromyalgia. I could touch briefly too on, you mentioned inflammation from all this acid, and that's exactly what it is. It creates all kinds of pain in the body, and that inflammation comes from the fermenting and comes from the acidosis. And so you get rid of that, you get rid of the inflammation, you get rid of your pain. But man, it's a beautiful thing. There's fasting. I would like to move into fasting because you're talking about, getting your nourishment other places. So, I mean, you can get it from the sun. You can do fasting if you are a religious person. Jesus was a huge proponent of fasting.
Fasting's been in every single culture, every single religion for thousands and thousands of years. It's been going on. All the leaders of spirit of any religion have all spent time in fast. And it's the best way to connect with that deep root energy. And it needs to be a part of a healthy lifestyle. It needs to be a part of the detoxification process.
Absolutely. And I'll tell you right now, John, I do intermittent fasting just about every day. And that's
me also.
Excellent. So I'm sure people can look into that if they want to. So I do intermittent fasting. Also every week I do at least a good 24 to 48 hours of dry fasting. I just pick a day and I start and I go as long as I want to go. Sometimes it's 2 or 3 days even. But I want to mention the benefits of fasting. I want to mention like the physiology and biology of why it works and how it works, is that your body is either using energy to heal or it's using energy to digest food. And it's so hard. We're eating all this processed food that's complex, that's these chains. It's so hard to break down. We're spending like all of our energy just digesting our food. You know, that's why we're so tired after we eat, because our energy is spent. You eat a big meal, Thanksgiving comes, oh man, you're out for the evening.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, you as well. I didn't even realize that's coming up. Yes, sir. But yeah, so I mean, you eat a big meal. If you eat a big vegan meal or a big fruitarian meal on Thanksgiving, you're not going to pass out for the evening. You're going to be running around the house getting stuff done, you know, because you're going to have plenty of energy. I found
you're eating higher vibration food. If you start to eat fruits, you know, the fruit has such a higher vibrational energy, a higher angstrom. The human body at health is got a vibration somewhere around 6,500 or 6,800 angstrom, and fruit vibrates around 8,000 to 10,000 angstrom. So when we start consuming foods that have high vibrational energy like this, it lifts up our energy, right? Compare that to, you know, what happens when you start eating meat, you know, zero angstrom units, no vibrational energy there. When you eat that, that's going to lower down your energy.
Oh, and you know what? I'd like to talk about that on a scientific level too, is that, you know, you are what you eat. I'm going to mention a couple of quotes here. You are what you eat. Physician, heal thyself. Let food be thy medicine, and an apple a day keeps the doctor away. Going back to those truths of phrases and all those things, you know, comes into you are what you eat. So do you want to eat healthy living things or that are healing and thriving and growing? Or do you want to eat dead, decaying things that are breaking down and decomposing? Because, you know, when you
adding to disease, pain, illness inside of your body, creating acidosis inside of your body.
Yep. So you take fresh fruit or fresh vegetables, and as soon as you eat that, especially if it's fresh, if it's like farm to table, you know, you go out and you pick you an apple and you eat it. It's got all those fresh nutrients. And what happens right after you pick it, it starts to die, you know, because once you pick fruit, it's going to decompose. But right after you pick it, it's healing itself, just like you. If you get a big cut on your arm, somebody cuts off your wrist, you're going to have a bunch of lymph and healing stuff go to that area, trying to repair it as quickly as possible. So that's what happens with fruit. So, I mean, you take fruit, you pull it right off the tree, chop it up and eat it. It's healing, you know, it's not technically dead yet. It's still living and it's healing and it's thriving and it's growing. You eat that and you're going to, you know, kind of assimilate those properties, you know, whereas the dead meat, I mean, man, even stuff in stores, I mean, forget meat. Let's go with stores. I mean, you get a can of green beans, right? This has been cut from the plant probably a year ago, has sat in some factory. It's been completely soaked in preservatives and chemicals that'll strip out anything that's good from it. It sits there in a factory. It gets put on a truck. It drives somewhere else. It gets to you know, a warehouse. It sits there for another, you know, couple months, and then it gets shipped again to a store shelf. It sits there for another couple months. Then you get it. It sits in your pantry for another couple months. By the time you eat it, there's nothing there. And then you cook it. You cook the crap out of it, and you get all the nutrients out. You make sure of that. And, you know, I'd also mention there, we're the only animal on the planet that cooks things before we eat it, you know? So, I mean, if it was supposed to be cooked.
If you want to eat your meat, as soon as you kill it, it starts to decompose, right? So if you want to eat your meat, you're better off to just grab the rabbit and just eat it right there live, because then at least it's got some nutrient left in it, right? As soon as you kill it, it starts to decompose. Then if you cook it, you're cooking everything else out of it. It just has no nutritional value. How could it be possible that something that is dead, decomposing, and cooked have more nutritional value than something that's alive, full of vitamins, nutrients, and minerals. It's still electric and still alive, which is exactly what our bodies need.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And
It's a misconception. It's a fallacy in our minds that we've been programmed to accept, that it's become a habit, that's become a behavior, that, we've surrounded all of our social functioning around it. We've surrounded all our happiness and joy around it. And we think we need it, and we're dependent on it. And the truth is, what we really need is we need choice. That's what humans need. That's what's distinctly important about us, is we need choice. And whenever choice is taken away, we are no longer happy. The fact that we have to eat is not a choice. We have to have the right to choose. We can choose to eat and we can choose to not eat. And it's not one is right and one is wrong. It's that we have that choice, and that's the human nature. And when we actually have the choice to eat or not eat, that's when we're free. That's when we truly become free. And that's when we step into our real power, right? It's not about how we look. It's not about how we feel. It's not about how much money we have. It's not about the house. It's not about the vacations. It's not about anything outside of ourselves. It's about reaching inside of ourselves and creating the life and connecting with the life that's given to us from creation.
Absolutely. And I want to mention two things there. One that you touched on is, about how we look. That's so culturally ordained, I guess I'll say, that, we pick it up from culture. Because over here, I just want to mention one example. Over here, Americans, we're in the United States, correct? So Americans, we get the idea that Asians are very thin and frail. If you go to Asia, they've got the idea that we're very large and obese, and which kind of is the case. And so the thing is, they eat better. Their diet is a little better. We've got the standard American diet, which is SAD, sad, and it makes us sad. You are what you eat, that low vibration stuff. So anyways, we've got this diet that does put on a bunch of extra weight, and they have a diet that, keeps them more lean. And so they appear thinner, and we think, oh man, you're not healthy. We hear about these third world countries that aren't eating a lot, and, they're all thin and skin and bones. It's like, that might be a little more appropriate than all the, extra fat that we got hanging around.
Science shows that eating less food is associated with longevity and living longer. Listen, Jay, I better stop us here, because I think you and I could probably talk forever. But I don't want to talk too long and just lose people. What I want to say though is, this is like, I had maybe a 15-minute phone call with you the other day, and I immediately clicked with you. I immediately clicked with you when I met you on Facebook, just from you commenting on my page. I want to say that, just talking with you today, I feel like I'm completely in alignment with what you're saying. I feel like although we're in different parts of the world here, we're both seeing things and arising at the same idea in the same place. And can you not see like how valuable that is, and how important that is, that even though we're in different places and we had no contact with each other, that we're both like converging at the same space. And that's because there is only one space and there is only one truth. And when you actually do the work and do the homework and do the study and do the meditation and do the practice, that you will actually find the truth, and you'll converge, and we'll all converge in the same place. And when that happens, the entire world is going to be one healthy, happy place. We're going to move into Wellville, as Dr. Moore says.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. That's awesome. That touches back to, what I was saying about not seeing each other as separate. It's a great time to be alive. Everybody's waking up. Everybody's feeling this, like-minded. It's just wonderful, and you're right. You had a background that was very traditional. I have a background that's, I guess, more metaphysical, of that sort. So, it's just wonderful to be able to meet in the middle and actually be, talking about views. And, not all of us are going to agree all the time on everything. And that's just something, that's a beautiful thing, because, it's good to challenge yourself and challenge your beliefs and challenge your ideals. It's just a wonderful thing. That's where growth happens.
It's great. It's great to have different ideas. You know what? I've just grown short with the same old ideas. And when people bring the same old ideas onto my page, I've kind of decided now that I can't really deal with that any longer. I just can't really make time for that anymore. If you're looking for the new ideas, if you're looking for the new approach, if you're looking for new stuff, I'm really happy to share and talk about the new stuff. But I just don't have time to argue and debate with people about the same old ideas about what we need and what's missing and how I'm going to die because I've moved towards a higher fruit diet. Thanks a lot, Jay.
Absolutely.
Let's connect again and talk again. I think this is a great start today, right? And I look forward to communicating with you some more and doing some more together.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, John. It was really a pleasure to be here. I appreciate it.
Thanks, buddy.